beings of this continent, especially of the city of New York, and seeing the display in any fruit store, it is hard to say at once just what it is that the eyes behold. Is it an exhibition of pictures by the futurists of the city of Berlin, of the continent Europe? Or is it a display of the famous perfumery stores for foreigners of the world capital, that is, the city of Paris? Only after a while, when you have finally managed to take in various details of the appearance of these displays, and somehow start reflecting again, can you clearly constate how much greater is the variety of color and shape of the jars in these American displays of fruit preserves than in the mentioned displays of the continent of Europe. And this is evidently due to the fact that in the common psyche of the beings of this new group, the combination resulting from the intermixture of former independent races happens to correspond more completely to a better perception and a thorough cognition of the sense and beneficence of the achievements of the reason, both of the beings of the contemporary community of Germany in respect of the chemical substances they have invented, called their aniline and alizarin, as well as of the beings of the community France in respect of perfumery. I myself, when I first saw there such an exhibition, could not refrain from entering one of these stores and buying about 40 jars of all shapes containing fruit preserves of every shade and color. I bought them to please the beings then accompanying me, and who came from the continents of Asia and Europe, where fruits so rarely beautiful to look at did not as yet exist. When I brought my purchases home and distributed them, these beings were at first indeed not a whit less astonished and delighted than I had been by their appearance. But afterwards, when they had consumed them for their first being food, all that was needed was to see their grimaces and the change of color on their faces to understand what effect these fruits in general have on the organism of beings. The case is still worse on that continent with that product which, for them, as well as for almost all the three-brained beings of the universe, is the most important product for first being food, and namely that product called prosphora, which they themselves name bread. Before I describe the fate of this American bread, I must tell you that this terra firma part of the surface of your planet called North and South America was formed thanks to various accidental combinations ensuing in the first place from the second great cataclysm not according to law, which occurred to that ill-fated planet, and secondly, from the position that terra firma occupies in relation to the process of the common systematic movement, having a stratum of what is called soil, which was and still is suited for the production of that divine grain, of which this same prosphora is made. With conscious knowledge of how to use it, the soil surface of these continents is capable of yielding, in a single what is called good season, the fullness of a complete process of the sacred heptaparapashanach, or in other words, a 49-fold harvest. And even by its semi-conscious use, as is not the case, the soil there yields of this divine grain a considerable abundance in comparison with the other continents. Well then, my boy, when the beings of that continent began to have, thanks to various fortuitous circumstances, many of those objects which, for this strange psyche of the contemporary three-brained beings who have taken your fancy, are a subject for their dreams, and are everywhere called their dollars, thanks to which fact, according to long-established usage there, they acquired in their picturings of the beings of all the other continents what is called a sense of superiority, with the result, also now usual among them, that they began to wiseacre with everything to achieve that said contemporary ideal of theirs. Then they also began wiseacring with all their might with this divine grain, out of which prosphora is made. They began employing every possible means to, so to say, deform this divine grain in order to give its product a beautiful and striking appearance. For this purpose, they invented a variety of machines by means of which they scrape, comb, smooth, and polish this wheat, which has the misfortune to arise on their continent, until they accomplish the complete destruction of all those active elements concentrated on the surface of the grains, just underneath what is called the husk, and precisely which are appointed by great nature for renewing in the common presences of beings what they have expended in worthily serving her. Hence it is, my boy, that the prosphora, or bread, now produced there from this wheat, which arises in such abundance on this continent, contains nothing useful to the beings who consume it. And from its consumption there is produced in their presences nothing but noxious gases and what are called there worms. However, it must in all fairness be remarked that if they got for themselves from this wheat nothing that enables them to serve great nature better or more consciously, nevertheless by producing in themselves the said worms, they do unconsciously very, very greatly assist their planet in honorable service to the most great common cosmic Trogoauto-egocrat. For are not these worms also beings through whom cosmic substances are also transformed? At any rate, the beings breeding on this continent have already achieved by these wiseacrings of theirs with this bread what they have greatly desired and striven to obtain, and namely that the beings of all the other continents should never fail to say of them, as for instance in the given case, something as follows: "Astonishingly smart fellows, these Americans. Even their bread is something extraordinary. So superb, so white, and simply charming. Really the splendor of splendors of contemporary civilization." But that from this deformity of wheat, their bread results in being worthless, and furthermore constitutes another of the innumerable factors in the spoiling of their stomachs. What is that for them? Are they not also in the front rank of contemporary what is called European civilization? The most curious thing in all this naivety of theirs is that they give the best and most useful of what nature forms in this divine grain for their normal existence to the pigs, or simply burn it, while for themselves they consume that substance which is formed by nature in the wheat only for connecting and maintaining those active elements which are localized chiefly, as I've already said, just under the husk of the grain. A second and also rather important factor in the disharmonizing of the digestive function of these unfortunate American three-brained beings is the system which they have recently invented for the elimination from themselves of the waste residue of their first food. And that is to say, the comfortable seats of what are called their water closets. In addition to the fact that this maleficent invention was and still is one of the chief factors in the said disharmonization now proceeding in them themselves, and also in almost all the beings of the other continents, who, by the way, have already begun in recent times very jealously imitating them in all their peculiar methods of